Ross, tell us a little bit about yourself first of all.
So my name's Ross Jackson-Hicks, and I originally I'm from Plymouth. Been in Cornwall now for 22 years. Moved down when I was 19. I had a pretty difficult childhood in the sense of I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 13. So I went from school to school, friendship group to friendship group, and yeah, just found life quite difficult to sort of navigate through really at a young age. Lots of overthinking and anxiety and low self-esteem, low self-worth, and ended up in a behavioural school when I was 15. And you know, knowing what I know now, obviously I was really struggling with my mental health from a young age. So when I left school, I then got into the world of drugs and alcohol, unfortunately, that I was using to escape my busy and sometimes very dark mind. So that was my younger years. That was my sort of teenage going into adulthood, and then really adulthood sort of presented some more challenges and some more problems. So my mental health really sort of started taking a little bit of a decline then, and I continued using drugs and alcohol until I was around 36 years old. So yeah, okay. It was a long journey.
Yeah, and obviously we're here speaking to you today about Man Down,
yeah,
which you founded. When did you start Man Down?
So Man Down was created in 2018, and myself and a friend of mine, Brad Osman, who co-founded it with me, and yeah, that was, you know, it'd be 7 years.
Wow.
7 years this September, yeah.
And what's the sort of mission statement with Man Down? What is it that Man Down sets out to achieve?
So our number one aim is to reduce male suicide. That's our main focus on the groups, and you know, I feel that we've had a really good crack at doing that over the last 7 years, and I'd like to think that we have saved a lot of lives in Cornwall and outside of Cornwall now, as we've decided to take our groups further afield at the beginning of last year. So that will always be our main focus for Man Down.
It's the statistics on sort of male suicide are pretty staggering when you look at them, aren't they? It's I think the general statistic is that males are 3 times as likely to die from suicide in the UK. So it's definitely something which, well, until recently, it's probably gone under the radar a little bit. So it's obviously great that there's sort of more of a limelight on this sort of thing now. Something that we deal with, obviously, with Lang Llewellyn is a lot of students, which can kind of be a little bit of a hot point for mental health issues. Is that something that you've come up against or had much experience with?
Yeah, we have. I mean, our groups are for anyone who identifies as male, 18 and over, so adulthood. And we've met a lot of younger guys over the years. Predominantly, it's men. You know, our demographic is sort of men from sort of 30 plus, and I think that has a lot to do with like the shame and the stigma which is attached to men's mental health. Not just men's mental health, but mental health in general. But I think younger people struggle with identity nowadays. I think they find it very, very difficult to figure out who they are, and I think for the students that are sort of moving away from home, that all of a sudden bit of independence, but also isolation maybe, you know, and security's gone from their parents. They obviously might you know, be drinking more than they normally are, and possibly sort of obviously partaking in taking drugs and stuff, which is obviously not great for their mental health. So I think there's probably a combination of things on top of the pressure of obviously, you know, doing a university degree, you know, having all those pressures of deadlines and exams, and so yeah, I think young people are struggling a lot more with who they are these days, and that has a massive impact on, you know, their self-esteem, their self-worth, and ultimately their mental health. So
yeah. And the flip side of that, I suppose, as you say, is now sort of over 30, where it's more like that being a sort of workplace environment.
Yeah.
How important is mental health in the workplace, and what are some of the challenges with workplaces and sort of mental health issues?
I think people within the working environment, depending on where they work, who they work with, what their you know, who their managers are, who their senior sort of members of staff are. Hay fever. That was coming for a while. I was trying to keep it. I was like itching my nose, and then bosh. Anyway, keep that in there. Yeah, mental health in the workplace is obviously very important. I mean, we spend over half our lives in work. And the working environment, the people that you're working with, you might be put with people that you don't necessarily get on very well with. And you have to navigate that. Like when you're in school, you know, you're in a classroom full of people. Half the people you might get on with, half the people you might not get on with. And that can be just a combination of like different views, different opinions, different personalities, different backgrounds, different environments at home. So I think people are taking it on board a lot more now that it is important, especially sickness and absence from work. I mean, it costs the UK, I think it's around £8 billion a year.
Wow.
in sickness and absence.
Wow.
For mental health. Because mental health, when you're going through a really poor episode of mental health, it's not just one day. It can be, you know, 2-3 months before you start feeling like yourself again, and that you want to come back into the working environment. And so I think mental health first aid is very important for senior members of staff, business owners to do. I think it should become obligatory to take that. And also you've got your suicide assist, which is like your suicide first aid, so it's suicide prevention courses, and they're all available through like Healthy Cornwall. They're like 2-day courses, and they're fantastic for people that have got authority or responsibility over members of staff. I had 18 staff at one stage.
Wow.
When we had a franchise, hairdressing franchise, and I was in a really, really bad place myself mentally, and I wasn't able to manage anyone, you know, even manage myself.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the mental health first aid then, and what that sort of looks like.
So the mental health first aid course is basically the same as like a first aid course, you know, general first aid course. So it goes through all of the all of the mental health problems and disorders, as they say, that people suffer with, you know, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and it just gives you like a real insight into the symptoms, what people struggle with, what to look out for, how to signpost people, how to have a conversation with people without trying to fix them. You know, we're not all therapists and counsellors. That's one of the beautiful things about Man Down, is that we're all volunteers. We've all got lived experience. So it's people that have actually gone through these problems and suffered with these, you know, these terrible disorders, and then we can sort of hopefully shine a bit of light make it relatable, so people can. I don't know. It helps people build trust with you a little bit easier if they know that you've been there before, rather than just sort of sat there reading off a script.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? These sort of shared experiences.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the knowledge and the understanding and the education people need to have around mental health and enables you to have better conversations, which in turn sort of helps people, I don't know, sort of be a little bit more open to the conversations, and less judging, because it's easy to judge people if you don't understand much about what they're going through. That's just, human nature. So yeah, I think it should be, like I said, I think it should be something that every business owner, especially with staff, should have to go through.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Yeah.
So Mandown then, you run sort of bi-monthly sessions, is that right? Every couple of weeks?
So yeah, fortnightly sessions. Yeah.
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 So what do those sessions look like, and how is that sort of accessible to people who might sort of be interested in that?
So anyone that wants to come along to a meeting, there's no booking required, there's no waiting list, there's no referral, there's no fee. So it's literally turn up on the evening, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m, wherever you are in Cornwall or Devon or further afield, and you've got the opportunity to come along to a meeting, then do it.
Yeah.
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 It's a peer-to-peer support group. There's no pressure to talk. There's no pressure to do anything. You can just sit there and listen to everyone's conversation. And like I said, it sort of helps to spread a little bit of clarity and a bit of, it makes it relatable. It's very empathetic. It's a very non-judgmental environment. Confidential, which is a very, very important part of what we do. Everything that's spoken about in the groups stays in the groups. It's a bit like Fight Club. You're not allowed to speak about it,
but less fighting.
But we're really, really strict on that. We've in all the years that we've been going and all the meetings that we've had, we've seen thousands and thousands of men. We've only ever had a few occasions where that's happened, and we're really, really tight on it. So those people are not invited back to the groups.
Yeah.
And I know that's a bit judgmental, but we have to be seen that we're really, really serious about that, because that's what encourages people to come along. So
you mentioned there sort of peer-to-peer support. What are the advantages of peer support then, and how have you found that to be effective within the groups?
So again, it's people with lived experience, so that builds a little bit of trust, well, a lot of trust, not a little bit. And there's continuity there as well, So it's people that have come to the groups that have now in a better place mentally, emotionally, and now they've got the opportunity to help other people, which is very powerful. So, there's not one facilitator per group that sits there and tries to fix everyone. They're there to sort of make sure everyone has the ability and the space to talk. And they're listening to these people's problems and concerns. And you hear some horrific stories. You really do. What people have had to, what people have had to go through, what people have had to deal with. But the symptoms are all the same. So if you tell me a story about your childhood, something that happened to you, and that's the reasons why you suffer with depression and PTSD or whatever that may be, I could have experienced something completely different, but our symptoms are still the same. So the story, although it is very, very important, it's an important part of your journey, it's almost irrelevant with the suffering that you're experiencing. So that's what we get people to understand, is that we're all in it together, and being a man, like you said, you're 3 times more likely to die by suicide. 3 out of 4 suicides are men. 82 men a week take their own life.
Wow.
On average, 12 men a day take one man every 2 hours. You know,
Shocking.
so it is shocking. So it's there's a reason behind why that is the way it is, and we just feel that talking, sharing, connecting with other men is important, and it's great to see all the guys connecting with each other, going out on walks, going swimming, going out for breakfast, you know, going out feeling part of the community again, feeling part of society.
That's an interesting point you touch on. Is this sort of society? Obviously, certainly in Cornwall, is sort of a unique landscape. What do you think are some of the sort of local or cultural challenges that we face specifically in Cornwall?
Yeah, I mean, Cornwall's a very, very poor part of the country. You know, we all this, you know, where we are today. This is beautiful, isn't it? You know,
It's stunning.
This is it's gorgeous, and I love living down in Cornwall. But there's a lot of depravity. There's a lot of poor communities. There's a lot of isolation, low wages. You know, so all these things go against sort of, you know, the good mental health sort of part of the world, I suppose. But again, it's an individual thing, isn't it? It's your experiences, your environment that you're within. I think obviously where you live plays a massive part, but I think it's really down to that individual, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back down to the man down sessions, then, what would you say to someone who was perhaps sort of struggling or a little bit hesitant, didn't know if it was the right sort of thing? What would you sort of say to encourage someone to have a think about it, come along?
To come along to a meeting, yeah. I would just encourage them to really, really try and break through that sort of shame, try and break through that embarrassment. The fear of coming along for some people is too much. And it just really works.
Yeah.
You know, I just say to people, look, it will really, really help you in one way or another. It will either make you realise that this is something that you need to continue doing, or it will make you realise that you're not actually ready for that, you know, for that moment just yet. So both parts are important. Because you can't be forced to come along, and you can't be forced to talk about yourself in a way which is going to make you feel uncomfortable, make you be quite vulnerable, because it's quite a scary place to be. But like I said, you don't need to talk. You can just come and listen to the other guys. That helps as well, you know, listening to other men speaking about themselves
So
in a
it's
way.
not just sort of talking, you can just come along, listen.
Yeah, you can come along and just listen, and no one will press you to talk. No one will say to you, look, you know, it's your turn to talk. We don't, you know, we do go around in a circle. We've got a rugby ball that you hold. That's your time to talk. But if you don't want it, you just pass it on, and no one's going to say, oh well, come on, you've got to talk. You know, it's not. That's not what it's about. You know, our slogan's "Let's talk about it," but we've noticed over the time that the most important part is the connection that these guys are making with each other, because it's that, you know, it's that sort of that trust, that bond of knowing that, you know, they can feel comfortable around other men just being themselves. You know, they don't have to put the mask on. We all put the mask on, don't we? Of work, of family. You know, we're talking about having kids and stuff. You know, you want to sort of seem together and quite strong and quite with it in front of your children. You don't want to show any weakness and stuff, which is just not true. You know, you got to show up as a human being every day, however that looks. And if you want to walk around all day crying, then if that's what you feel like doing, just do it. You know, I tend to do it in the truck and with the windows up.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just making people feel comfortable with who they are, you know?
Yeah.
And I think today's society with, you know, all the social media stuff that's going on, and it's so hard for people, especially the young guys growing up. You know, they haven't got a clue who they are. You know, they don't know what they're supposed to like, what sort of music they're supposed to like, how they're supposed to dress, who they're supposed to be friends. You know, there's a lot of mixed messages going on, and I think that plays a massive part in people's sort of, you know, poor mental health as well, is trying to discover who they are, you know, comparing themselves to other people. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think, you know, talking is a tool because it unlocks so much of your mind, you know, rather than suppressing everything and pushing everything beneath the surface and pretending everything's okay, like what us men do. It sort of eradicates that. It gets rid of it, you know.
You mentioned about sort of identity playing a big part in it. How sort of important do you think it is that more public figures or celebrities are sort of shining a light on issues with men's mental health and those challenges?
Yeah, it's important because they've got a platform and they've got, you know, a lot of people following them. You know, they've got a responsibility, haven't they, to try and encourage people to partake in, you know, positive distractions rather than negative distractions, and encourage people to talk more. You know, I met up with I didn't meet up with. It sounds like he's my mate, but I met Prince William, His Royal Highness at Royal Cornwall, a couple of Fridays ago, and we had an email come through a couple of days before and said, look, you know, we've got a really important guest coming, and then we were told it was Prince William, and he's just a really nice, genuine, humble guy, you know, and I think he's going to do a lot of good with when he becomes king. I don't know how much power he's got over certain aspects of you know, society, but I think he's going to do good, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously we talked about the loss of his mum, you know, tragically losing his mum at such a young age, and obviously all the problems going on with his wife, with her cancer treatment, and obviously his dad's really poorly as well. So, you know, he's just a bloke, you know.
Yeah.
He's going through some really tough times, and you know, I don't think he's allowed to talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
On his platform, but he has done, and I think he will continue to do so, and that's important. Then obviously you've got, you know, sportsmen, you know, Tyson Fury, and you know, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, talking about his mental health struggles. So it's sort of just humanising it, isn't it? You know, It's just making people think, you know, we've all got our own struggles and our own battles going on.
Gives a chance, I suppose, for people to, you know, that are struggling with these things to see it and humanise and relate to you know, these people who are perhaps in sort of different social standings, but have the same symptoms and the same
absolutely
challenges.
the same, exactly the same symptoms. That's exactly what it is. All right.
Great. So going back to Man Down again, if, you know, obviously you've had 7 years of really good work. It's there's plenty of awareness about the charity, and we certainly see it around a lot. How can people get involved to help if they want to help, and you know, what sort of opportunities do you guys sort of have open to things like sponsorships or involvement with events or things like that?
So we're a non-profit organisation, so we heavily rely on like donations, fundraising events, charitable donations. So this time of year is great because there's a lot of stuff on for us. A lot of fundraising events, probably from mid-May through to sort of like September. And we've just been welcomed with open arms in Cornwall. Everyone's been so supportive and really, really behind what we do. So the support's been immense. Been so, you know, really, really heartwarming. But volunteering and stuff like that. So obviously I mentioned earlier on in the conversation that people that have come along to the meetings, they then have got an opportunity to help other people, and become facilitators and helping the meetings. So that's sort of one thing. If people want to come along to a meeting and eventually sort of help support that sort of specific meeting, then there's an opportunity to do that. If people want to raise money and organise fundraising events, then, you know, we've got a fundraising team that will help support setting up a fundraising page and give you some merchandise and, you know, some collection pots, and come along to the event as well. We've also got an events team now, because alongside obviously Man Down, you know, we've all got other jobs as well as being parents and stuff. So being everywhere, all the time proves difficult. So we've got over 90 volunteers now.
Wow.
So it's like a really big sort of organisation. A board of directors as well, with myself, Ross, Chris and Matt. So, we have sort of regular board meetings, which I find really boring. My ADHD is sort of, going haywire.
The admin side of it, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the ideas man, I like to be quite creative with stuff, and I like to sort of be a little bit of a sort of...
On the front line of it all.
Yeah, I like to go in and sort of, shake things up a little bit and then step away and let them deal with all the carnage.
Yeah.
So we've also got a man down app as well.
Wow.
That's a really important part of our charity. So
is that something that people can use to sort of book onto sessions?
Yeah,
or?
well, no booking. So people, come on, Zelah. So the man down app's completely private, completely separate from all of social media platforms. So it's an app that you can download from like the Apple downloading.
Yep.
I'm not a tech guy at all.
Wherever you get your apps from.
Wherever you get your apps from. And you then join your specific meeting group. So say if you go to the Famouth meeting, you can join the Famouth page, and everything is just all securely private on there. So private chat. So people jump on and see how, check how people are doing. They put, motivational posts up. People can download the app if they don't come along to a man down meeting, but they won't be allowed in any of the groups unless they've attended the meeting.
Right.
But there are some very useful links on there, and lots of sort of mental health advice and stuff like that. But that's been a game changer for us, because then that just means people can connect with each other sort of 24 hours a day. So that's been great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The obviously you're seven years old now as a charity. What would you hope to sort of be looking like at year 10 or year 20? What, if resources were no issue, say, you can go sort of as far as you want to go with it. What does that sort of look like?
So last year, January 2024, we decided that we were going to take man down further afield. So we were going to move out of Cornwall. Not move out of Cornwall, but take meetings into Devon. So we've got 11 groups in Devon now. And we've got 2 in Wiltshire, 2 in Somerset. Where else are we? Wiltshire. My mind's gone completely blank now. We've got 1 in Scotland.
Wow. Wow.
We've got 3 in Hampshire. So we're sort of moving, in the right direction. Finding volunteers, finding facilitators is probably the hardest part. Finding venues and stuff is relatively easy. But finding facilitators, finding volunteers that want to support the mission is quite difficult outside of Cornwall, because obviously this is where our sort of larger network is now. But the guys up in Wiltshire are absolutely, taking over that area. And it's finding the right people in the right places that are able to sort of then, grow that team. Yeah. It's almost like a sort of bit of a franchise, I suppose, in a sense. But then obviously everything's supported through us, through HQ. But then obviously you've got the financial side. So, we're really trying to find a little bit of financial stability right now. Getting partnerships and collaborations and sponsorships, corporate sponsorships through larger businesses that have got predominantly male workforce environment, that we can go into the workplace and sort of say, look, what we do within Man Down, you can implement into the workplace, but we can help support you with that. So we've got people that are actively, doing that for us right now, and that's we've just actually sealed a really good partnership with Cormac.
Oh wow!
So that's going to be launched over the next couple of weeks. So I'm really, really excited about that. That's a spoiler, by the way. But I always say, you know, I always do the Euro lottery. I'm not a very lucky person when it comes to stuff like that, but I always do the Euros. And last week, I don't know if you guys do the lottery or whatever, but it was like 200 million.
Wow.
Like
big money.
And big money, like life changing for everyone, for generations, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I always say I would just stick 100 million into Man Down.
Wow.
Straight away. It'd be the biggest, largest mental health charity in the world. So if resources wasn't an issue, the money, the people, every town in every city across the country, and further afield, you know.
Yeah.
There'd be no limit. I would. My ADHD would be on point with that one.
Well, he's hoping that, you know, we catch the eye of a generous benefactor with
100 million. Exactly. Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it?
That would. The one of the final questions I'd like to ask, Ross. What, in your opinion, would a sort of mentally healthy Cornwall or Devon look like to you?
That's a good question. I like that. So it would look like people would be very, very comfortable having conversations with people wherever, whenever. And there would be no suffering in the shadows. Everyone would have an opportunity or have someone to speak to, because not everyone's got that opportunity. Not everyone's got that person that they can confide in, or on the other side of it, shall we say, not everyone's got the ability to be able to talk, you know, and feel comfortable, or got the right tools to know what to say.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult, you know, for men that have never, you know, talked about themselves, like I said, in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. You know, it's finding the right words to say, understanding maybe what you're going through and what you're suffering with, because you've been sort of, you know, ignoring it and suppressing it and, you know, pretending it's not there for such a long time. So that would be what it would look like, I suppose, you know, and everyone to get a dog as well.
That would certainly help.
She's just, you know, she's the therapist.
So she sort of keeps you going during.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've got two kids. You know, I've got Rudy and Rafferty. Rudy's going to be 14 tomorrow. Rafferty's 9. I love my children with all my heart. I would literally die for them tomorrow, and I obviously honestly mean that, but I don't always like them. And I love my dog, and I always like her.
Yeah.
So it's unconditional love, you know.
They don't really answer back, do they?
No, never. They're always happy to see you. You can go out in and out of the room for 5 seconds, you know, wagging the tail. Like, where have you been? I'm so happy to see you. It's lovely. But she gets me out all year round, you know.
Yeah.
Snow, rain, whatever the weather. I've got to take her out. I've got to take her for a nice walk, and just, you know, being out here today, it's just amazing, you know, and staying off that thing as well.
That's huge.
That is a nightmare. That is an absolute nightmare.
That's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Oh God, it is. I'm addicted to it. You know, in the evening, I'm addicted to my phone. You know, but I think I'm obviously aware of that. You know, and I think I do what I do during the day. And then I suppose with my free time, I scroll through videos of dogs and people rock climbing. But like the younger generation, you know, like we were saying earlier on, it's just a constant comparison. Yeah. Constantly comparing themselves to other people. Why aren't I there? Why haven't I got that? Why can't I have that? And it's just really, that's going to be the next pandemic. You know, the social media addiction, the mental health crisis that bit of technology in your pocket is going to cause the younger generation. That's going to be really, really,
it's massive, isn't it? And like you say about the aspects of comparison, it's very easy to put up the best bits of your life, of course, make everything look fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do it.
See, you know, those challenges and struggles, I suppose. So.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that. Yeah. But it's knowing that, you know, it's understanding that. Whereas the younger generation, you know, especially the teenagers, their brains haven't fully developed yet. You know, that frontal cortex is still going through that change, and they can't regulate their emotions. They don't, you know, and they're seeing all this stuff, and it's just, it's no good, you know.
And one final question, Ross, if you could sort of share one message to men who might be struggling with mental health issues, or, you know, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, what would that message be, and what would you sort of encourage them to do?
Reach out, 100%. Reach out to either someone that you can trust and you know that will support you, but have that conversation. Start that conversation early, and then you have a lot of different avenues that you can go down. You know, there's medication, you know, exercise, diet, you know, therapy, whatever it may be, whatever's going to work for you. You need to be proactive. You need to put things into place, put action to words, and just try your hardest not to fall into the clutches of negative distractions, alcohol, drugs, you know, gambling, stuff like that. You know, it's a really, really dark place to find yourself. So yeah, reach out, you know, definitely.
Well, Ross, thank you ever so much for taking the time
to
speak with us today.
Great. Yeah,
It's been a pleasure to meet yourself and Zelah, and I wish you all the best for Man Down, and we'll certainly keep an eye and do what we can to get involved.
Thank you very much.
No problem at all.
Awesome. Thank you.